All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen, like a desktop, laptop, computer, something like that. If you were on a smaller screen, like a mobile device, it's going to be below the video. So I typically start with questions that were asked up to an hour before office hours starting. So I'll be starting here with Diane C. On Fridays, I typically like to go through something that I think would be interest to everyone. So I get asked all the time, how do we create effortless power? If you look at players like Ernie Els, Freddie Couples, right? These are guys that you look at, their swings just look effortless, but they both have something in common. And that thing they have in common is that they get the hands up in the air. Their swings are more upright. They're more vertical. They have more elevation of their hands. So that comes from basically getting our arms to go like this in the swing. And if we can add more of this to our swing, it's going to make things easier. Basically what that does is it creates more space and time to accelerate the club. So the more space and time I have to accelerate the club, the more speed I can generate at impact. So that would be this versus something like this. If I have the club way down here like this, I don't have as much space between the club head and the golf ball to be able to create speed. But if I have it more up here, now the club head's further away, and it makes it a lot easier for me to do that. So how do we get the club up there? How do we get that elevation? So first, what we want to do is we want to understand what do we have to do with our body, or what works in our body to make that happen. And what it is, the muscles that elevate the arms are your front deltoid muscles here. So if you were to just kind of take your arm with me right now and just relax your left arm and put your right arm on your front of your shoulder here, and then lift your arm. You're going to feel how it's soft right now, but as soon as you start lifting your arm, you're going to feel those muscles kind of contracting. So those muscles right there in the front of your shoulders, these are the front delts. These are what lift the club up in the air. So the way that I like to kind of think about how we elevate the club is to think about you're making a touchdown signal, right? So that's exactly what when the referees in a football game or they're saying it's a field goal or a touchdown, they're lifting their arms just like this. This is saying that it's good, right? That's exactly what you want to do in the golf swing when you're bringing this club up to the top. So you want to have that feeling that you're making a touchdown signal. So a good drill to do is to just kind of, right? So I want you to do a touchdown signal initially. And then what I want you to do is I want you to turn your shoulders and your hips to where your shoulders go underneath your chin. What I see a lot of times people do this drill, what they'll do is they'll go like this. I don't want you to go like this. I want you to turn your shoulders underneath your chin. So what you're going to feel here is your shoulders tilting more steeply down. And turn my shoulders underneath. So it's on a tilt like that. Right? That's how I want to be. So it's like this, and then underneath like that. That's where we want to be at the top of the swing. So we can go like this, do our touchdown, and then go up like this, and then we'll come all the way through. So we want to get a good sense and feeling for that. Now, let's take the club and do the same thing. Let's put it up in our hands here. Let's do the same thing. Do this kind of touchdown signal. And let's kind of lift the club up almost like we're doing a touchdown, right? And when we do this, we want to hinge the club up as well. So hinge the club up and then lift it up to where you're basically up over your right shoulder. And then from there, we can turn and get the shoulder underneath. And now we're in a nice vertical position at the top. This should feel like a very powerful position at the top of the swing. And then from there, I just want you to swing down and through into the full finish. Once you start getting comfortable with that and you're starting to get a sense and feel for where your hands are and where the club is at the top, now we can start basically we've gained a GPS of where our hands and the club should be at the top. Because getting there is a hard thing for a lot of people because they don't know how to hit the ball from there. So what we have to do is we have to understand how do we get the hands up there to begin with. And doing this drill is a very, very easy way to do that. So again, we're going to hinge it up. We're going to put our hands up over our right shoulder, and we're going to turn, making sure our shoulders are tilted down. We don't want to go like this, right? We want to turn, or we want to hinge up, touchdown, and then get the chin underneath the shoulders. And you can see I'm very, very vertical here at the top. This would be flat. This would be more like a touchdown, very vertical here at the top. And then from there, I can swing through. Again, once we start getting a feel for that, now we can just start doing some practice swings where we're starting in our address position here, but we're going to do a normal backswing where we're trying to get into that same position. So it's going to feel, you're going to feel like there's a lot more of this going on in your swing, right? You're going to feel a lot more of this. Whereas before, you probably felt a lot more of the arms going kind of back behind you a little bit, right? A lot of bend with the right arm. Really bringing this club kind of back like this across your chest. You're going to feel like basically there's a lot less bend in your trail arm, and you're lifting. It's more of a lifting. You're feeling those muscles working, those front delts working as you're bringing that club up to the top. We're going to feel like this club's basically going straight up in the air. And you can see if I do that, now I'm in that nice vertical position there at the top. And I'm telling you, you work on this, you get more space and time to accelerate the club, you're going to be able to generate a lot more speed in your swing. So give this a try. I think it can really help you to get those, give this touchdown drill a try. It will really help you to get those arms more vertical. Now, one thing that happens sometimes, or a lot of times I should say, one thing that happens quite frequently when people go from something like this, or even people who have an upright swing and get their swing more upright, what typically happens in the downswing is they'll come down more steep, right? So they'll come up here and then they'll kind of bring it down in the same way. So when we get the hands more up, what we need to do is we need to get that, make sure that we're getting that club shallowed out. So like I said, if you're someone who was really flat before, you may not have needed to shallow out the club very much. You may have just brought it down and it was already in a shallow position. So you may need to feel like when you're doing this, if you bring this club back down in the same way, you may need to feel like you're going more like this as you're starting down. So that way you're not hitting kind of over the top kind of slices. You'll gain more speed, but we don't want to start hitting the ball all over the place. We want to make sure that we're keeping this club on plane. So in order to do that, we need to shallow it out when we're starting down. So what that is that's basically the move. And even if you're someone who was fairly vertical before and then got more vertical, you still need to get the club back to where you were before when you were hitting it, when you were swinging on plane. We need to get that club shallowing out. And that's what the move course is. So if you want to check out, do this drill. And if you find that you don't, now some people will automatically start bringing that club from the inside, but some people will start down steep. So if you find that if you're that person where you're coming down steep, which happens to a lot of people, you're going to want to work on the move course. And this move course is included with the All Access membership. All you have to do is click the instruction tab, and that will take you to, or if you click the instruction tab, then you can click the top speed golf system, then you can click the move from there, and you can start getting the feeling of having the hands vertical and then shallowing out that club in the start of the downswing. And one drill that's really great for that is the tennis racket drill from the move course. So check that out. I think it can really help you to get more speed and also retain any kind of consistency that you had before. All right, so let's take a look at Diane C's question. So I find that when I practice without a golf ball, I tend to hit above the ground. Does this mean that I'm not staying down, or if the spine angle is off, or is there something else that can be happening? It's really hard to say. There's lots of things that could be at play here. It could be that when the golf ball is there, you're not comfortable with hitting the ground. It could mean that you're not staying down and you're pulling up because you're afraid of hitting the ground. It could be that the spine angles are off. It's hard to say for sure. But what you have to do is, one, not be afraid to hit the ground when the golf ball is not there, and then two, to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if you feel like you're trying to hit the ground, right? If you feel like you're coming in and you're trying to hit the ground, but the reality is that you're not, then you need to feel like you're maybe chopping down into the ground, like you're going to dig a trench into the ground. That may be what you need to feel like needs to happen. That's really what a lot of what golf is. And I know I've preached this several times. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you can develop the skill to adjust your field to get the desired result that you want, then you can play good golf. All right. So what that basically means is that if you're hitting 6 inches behind the golf ball, if you can adjust your field to hitting 6 inches in front of the golf ball, and that gets you to hit where the golf ball is, then you can hit solid shots. You're not going to chunk it anymore, right? If you're swinging over the top, and you're swinging over the top, but that feels like it's on plane. If you can adjust your feel to feeling like you're swinging away from the inside, that will more than likely get you to where you're swinging more on plane. Because folks, feel isn't always real, right? What we feel like is happening. I hear this all the time. I get students that come to me for swing reviews. They've never filmed their swing before in their entire life, and they have to film their swing to send it to me in a swing review. And they look at it the first time, and they're telling me they cannot believe what they are seeing in their golf swing. They had no idea that they were doing this and that, and so on and so forth. So, what we feel is usually not the reality of the swing or reality of what's going on. So you have to adjust, and it may seem out of crazy ordinary. The people that are the best at making or are able to improve their impact or to improve their golf swings are the people who get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're swinging, if you're coming over the top, right, and that's comfortable for you, and that feels like you're swinging right on plane, then I'm telling you, swinging away from the inside or feeling like you're swinging away from the inside, it's going to feel really uncomfortable because in your mind, you think, well, that's going to be a big hook or a block, or I'm not going to be able to get the face close up. Basically, you feel like you're not going to hit a good shot. But if you can get over that, right, get comfortable with being uncomfortable and do this at the range, right, where you have nothing to lose, what's the worst thing that can happen? You'll hit, instead of hitting your big slice, you might hit a hook instead. At that point, a lot of people have become shocked at, whoa, I felt like I swung away from the inside, and I felt like I closed the face, 20 degrees. But the reality was that I hit a dead straight shot. And once you do that one time, that's when you start getting out of that feeling. But you have to understand the worst thing that can happen is that you'll overdo it. And then at that point, all you have to do is ease off of it. So try to go to the extreme, get out of your comfort zone. And if you do that, you're going to be more than likely to make changes and make changes much more quickly than someone who's going to be afraid of getting out of those comfort zones. So get out of your comfort zone. That's really how you make change. It's kind of like the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. If you don't change what you do, you're going to get the same result every time. And if you don't feel like it's extreme, you're more than likely going to be doing something that's very close to what you were doing before. It's not going to be different enough. So I urge you, if you're trying to change things in your swing, you've been to the range and you've been working on something and you have been, trying to get this fixed. And it seems like no matter what you do, you can't get it. But people tell me that, I almost already know that they're not getting out of their comfort zone. They're staying where they like to be, what feels comfortable. But what feels comfortable for them is not getting them the results that you want. So if you want to change your results, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone. That's really the best advice I can give you as far as these things go. All right. So Dennis P says, I've been working through the Tuscany Golf system and finally got a smartphone and clip holder to record my swing. The problem is it's January and I ain't swinging outside, so I don't have room to record my full swing. What would you recommend for matching a swing session with a phone camera? What would you recommend for matching a swing session with a phone camera? I'm not sure what that means. What would you recommend for matching? Maybe it means watching a swing session. Well, I mean, if you don't have room to video your swing, I'm not sure what you can do, to be honest. I mean, you don't have to be outside. You can record swings inside. I very often record swings from inside my garage. I try to find, if you have space in your home, you can do it from your home. But otherwise, I'm not sure really what you could do. You could try to look in a mirror to see if that helps. But yeah, if you don't have the space to swing in the house, then it's going to be difficult to try to change your swing. But what you also can do is use so this is a training. It's called the Impact Snap. This would be good to use indoors. You can see it's basically like a cutoff club. You're not going to hit anything. If if you have enough space to kind of swing around your body with nothing in your hands, you should be able to have some space to kind of swing this. So you could use something like this to see if that will help. This is a training aid. It's called Impact Snap. You can get these at impactsnap.com. A TV remote, something like that would work fine. An actual cutoff golf club would work fine. Cut off broomstick, something that would be cut off. That way you don't knock a lamp over might be good. But this you get impactsnap.com. Promo code CBallard. You can get 10% off. We do get a kickback from that. But you also get a discount. So it works out for everybody. But yeah, highly recommend that training aid. But if you don't have the space to film your swing, it'd be tough. So Dallas K says, how do you change or alter your swing on a par 3 where you have to land with minimal roll using mid to long iron? So basically, you need to hit it higher, right? So a couple ways that you can hit it higher. One would be hitting a fade. So when you hit a fade, the face is open to the path, right? So face is open to the path, which will typically add some loft. So you can set up to try to hit a fade. That's why you see a lot of tour players hit fades, because it's a little bit easier for the shots that you're talking about to get it. If they have kind of a tight pin location or something like that, it's a little bit easier to get it to where you need to go. Now, keep in mind, when you hit a fade, you're typically going to lose some distance because of that. So that would be one way to get the ball higher. Another way would be to add loft, right? So instead of hitting a fade, which adds a little bit of loft, gets a little bit of curvature on there. If you're a right-handed golfer and you have a left pin, that you don't really want to hit a fade in that situation, because you're going to have the ball kind of moving away from the hole. So you may just want to hit a high draw, or just a high shot in general. Which, if that's the case, you may want to release the club a little bit earlier. So if you're someone who's coming in and you're getting lots of forward shaft lean and compression, you're hitting the ball very low, a way that you get the ball to go higher is to add some loft. Now, keep in mind, you're going to lose some distance when you do that, so use more club, release the club a little bit earlier. That will get the ball to go a little bit higher, because you're going to be adding more speed with more club, and you're going to be adding more loft by releasing it a little bit early. Another thing that you can do is kind of have your compression line be a little bit more angled away. So typically, you're going to be very slightly angled away, a degree 2 or 3. Whereas if you want to hit it a little bit higher, you're going to come in a little bit more shallow and have your compression line a little bit more angled away, and have more of kind of a sweeping motion on the ball. That will also help the ball to go a little bit higher. Now, in general, if you're wanting to hit the ball higher, if you're struggling with these kinds of shots, I would recommend gaining some speed. So this is a kind of a diagram right here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but imagine this is a 7-iron that is swung at 70 miles per hour. Okay, this first one here, it's going up, and then this is the height of the shot right here, and then it comes down. You can see it's a shorter shot, and then this would be the same club, 7-iron, now swung at 90 miles per hour at the same launch angle. But because you're transferring more energy to the golf ball, the ball is going to climb in the air more, and it's going to go higher, right? And then it's also going to go further, right? So getting more speed is also another way to hit the ball higher and further, right? So that's what I mean, if there was a long-term thing that you would do, and it wouldn't even be that much long-term. We're talking, a few weeks in our 20-minute distance fix program. Getting more speed would be the thing that's really going to help you the most. But to go out tomorrow or today, if you go play today and you're in this kind of situation, I would try to take a little extra club, hit a fade, or hit a club where you're releasing it a little bit more and staying a little bit more behind it and coming in more shallow. that's going to make the ball go higher. But getting more speed overall for your game, it's not just going to help you hit the ball higher. It's going to help you to hit the ball further. And it's also going to help you to lower your scores, because the longer your drives are, the shorter your approaches are. The shorter your approaches are, the closer proximity to the hole you have, and the more birdie chances you're going to have, and that's going to lower your scores. All right. So Brock A says, hello, Q. New to TSG and new to golf in general. Next few months are going to be cold, wet. Watched your indoor series, but most drills had full swings. Any drills that are effective and won't put holes in my ceiling. I can do a full swing slow, but any speed runs the risk of a hitting ceiling. Yeah. So like I talked about earlier, I'd recommend basically not using a full club and using just like a handle of something. So like the impact snap would be good. The the TV remote, all the time, I'll be watching golf on TV or something. I'll grab my TV remote and kind of try and do some swings and things like that. So those are all things that just you basically using like a cutoff, something that's cut off, so that way you're not putting the holes in the ceiling. You can also just grip your hands together. You don't necessarily have to hold on to something. I think it makes it a little bit easier, but you can just kind of grip your hands together and kind of do the same kind of things. So Dennis L says, I just realized that I have more power and straighter when I do the following. When I address the ball, I have my wrists hang, which makes them straight down instead of having them at an angle. It's this okay. I looked at some of your videos and I believe I'm doing what you are doing. So generally you want your arms to kind of hang straight down. Yeah. You don't want to be out like this typically. That doesn't mean that you can't play good golf doing that. There are lots of players that play good golf doing that. Bryson used to do that quite a bit. He doesn't. He stands a little bit closer to the ball now. But someone who's very famous, Mo Norman, right? He was out here like this. He was an excellent ball striker, but he could have done some different things to get more power, right? So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for power. If you want more power, I would kind of let your arms hang, because that's going to help you to get the club shallowing out. That's going to help you to get the handle a little bit lower. That's going to help you to be in a better situation. So that's what I would recommend doing. But it sounds like you're on the right track. Now, one thing to keep in mind for the driver, you are going to reach just a little bit, right? So if you look at tour players, their hands aren't hanging straight down with the driver. Typically, there is just a little bit of reach there. And the reason for that is that the club is so much longer. If you look here, here's a wedge, here's a driver. This club is a lot longer than my wedge, right? So, I need to, here would be like where I'd be for a wedge, right? Kind of hanging my arms straight down. I'm going to stand up a little bit more upright and reach just a little bit more for my driver, just because it's so much longer. But sounds like you're on the right track to me from what you're saying. So Ali S says, can you please demonstrate how to control ball flight, high, medium, and low at impact or downswing? So that's all controlled by the loft, right? So adding more loft, reducing more loft. That's where 80% of it comes from. And that's really what you want to focus on. So that has to do with the release, right? So if I'm trying to hit a really low trajectory shot, I need to get more forward shaft lean at impact. I need to release this club later. And the way that I would release this club later would be, I need to get my body opening up more. I need to get my hands lower to the ground as I'm coming through. And I need to feel like my arms are very long through impact. That's how you would get that ball flight to be a lot lower. Medium trajectory would be mostly what we talk about in the top speed golf system, getting that release to be about 45 degrees out in front. You're just easing off of that a little bit. Your body isn't as open, right? Your hands aren't as far in front. Your hands will be more like in this area, right? At impact, you're standing a little bit taller. To hit it higher, it would be the opposite, right? So I'll hit it higher, I would release the club a little bit sooner, right? Release the club a little bit sooner. Your body doesn't need to be open as much. You can be a little bit taller through impact. Your hands can be a little bit higher through impact. That's going to add some loft. So what I would recommend doing is just go to the range and practice these things, right? Practice alternating hitting shots between medium, low, and high trajectory. So I would have a plan. Here's my plan for this shot. I'm going to hit a low shot. And the way I need to do that is I need to get more forward shaft lean. And the way I need to do that is I need to get my hands a lot lower. I need to get my body opening up. I need to get my hands in front of the ball at impact. So I may do a couple practice swings where I'm really exaggerating that kind of feeling, right? And then I would step in and I would try to hit the shot and see if it comes out lower, right? And I would try it. I would keep doing it. I would do what's called win, pass, lose, stay, which means if you're successful, you're going to pass and you're going to go on to the next shot. If you're unsuccessful, you lose, then you're going to give it another try and try to make an adjustment to get the result that you want. So let's say I tried it and I chunked it, all right? So on the next one, I'm going to try the same. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to maybe feel like I get a better weight shift to my lead side or something like that, something to prevent the chunk from happening. Now I'll try it again. Let's say I got it on that one. Now I'm going to go to my medium trajectory shot. So this one should feel pretty normal. It'll be a normal shot. I would do, kind of a practice swing, doing exactly what I want to do in that shot. And let's say that I thinned it. Well, on the next one, I'm going to try and get that strike higher on the face. And let's say on the next one, I hit a big slice. Well, I need to feel like I'm swinging more from the inside with a closed face. So on the next one, I'm gonna take a practice swing where I'm doing that, and then I'm gonna try it again. Let's say I'm successful, then I'm gonna go to the high one, right? And then I'm gonna think about, okay, what do I need to do to hit the ball high? I need to stand taller through impact. I need to release the glove a little bit earlier, right? And as I'm coming through, be nice and high with the chest as I'm coming through. And when I do that, I'm going to get my high shot. I'll do a practice swing when I'm trying to accomplish that, and then I'll hit the shot. If it's successful, then I'll go back to the other one. That's really how you want to work through it on the range. That's how you get good at controlling those flights. Develop a better awareness for it. It's one thing to know what to do, right? It's one thing to know what you need to do. It's about execution. If you want to get good at executing what you need to do, then you have to go practice it. And the best way to practice it is to do exactly that. Cycle through those shots and do win, pass, lose, stay. So that way you can get to where you need to go with it. Because otherwise you're just kind of going through the cycle. You need to do win, pass, lose, stay. So that way you can make adjustments to get the desired result that you want. So Gerald D says, what is the best swing path for the driver? Depends on what you're trying to do. Depends on what the desired outcome of the shot is. If the desired outcome of the shot is maximum compression, then typically your best path is going to be 0, right? So if you think about, for a distance, right? If you think about for distance, the way you get distance is transferring as much energy to the golf ball as possible. Now, obviously, you can transfer a lot of energy into the golf ball and then just hit it straight into the ground. But we definitely want to be launching it and getting some loft. But the way that you transfer as much energy to the golf ball is to have everything kind of zeroed out, right? So if I have a path that's too much from the inside or too much from the outside, that's like imagine this is a nail and I'm trying to hit this nail into a piece of wood. Well, that'd be like going like this, trying to drive that nail in like that, right? The way that I transfer as much energy to the head of this nail into the piece of wood is to go straight down into that. That's how I transfer as much energy as possible. So that's going to allow you to do that. Now, one thing that you probably heard is that you should hit a draw and things like that. And for most players, I do think that is a good way to go. The reasoning is when you hit a draw, which would mean your path going into out a little bit and your face a little bit closed. When that face closes, it de-lofts the club a little bit. And when you de-loft the club, that allows you to transfer more energy to the golf ball. So anywhere between 0 and a little bit of draw is typically going to be best to get distance. But obviously, we can overdo that, right? We can overdo that and we can get a hook. If the ball has a lot of curvature on it, you're not going to be gaining distance. You're going to be losing distance because you're hitting it with a glancing blow, right? And that spin axis is tilting, which is making it curve, and that's taking away distance. So that's why you want to transfer as much energy to the golf ball. So it depends on what kind of outcome. If you're trying to hit a fade, you want to have your path out to in. If you're trying to hit a draw, you want your path in to out. If you're trying to hit it straight, you want your path to be 0. John S says, what role does the right thumb and forefinger play, if any, during the swing? I've been making some swings on my indoor mat while trying to keep these fingers off the club, and it seems to be easier to shallow out the club and wrist angles correct. Yeah, so you want to keep those out of the swing pretty much. These are the ones that are the least involved in the swing at all. They don't have much of a role, and most people give these fingers too much role, in the swing. So you're on the right track, right? We want to keep the pressure out of these fingers. Really, these just act as stability. Is really all they act for. But the problem is that a lot of people put a lot of pressure into these 2 fingers and make the club cast and things like that. So doing what's called the pistol drill, what you're talking about, is a great way to get the feeling of how the club should be working in the swing, to get some lag and get the club to release properly and things like that. What they provide is stability, is really what they want to do. But you want to keep the pressure out of these as much as you can. Mainly because this part of the club is moving faster than this part, right? So this is where you want to be supplying power. This is where you want to have pressure in the club. This is what you want the fulcrum to be. So the fulcrum is basically the pivot point, right? You want that to be the butt end of the club, because that's going to allow you to have the most speed. If you're putting the most pressure in these fingers here, then this part of the club becomes the fulcrum, and that's going to be less speed. So if you imagine, here's the best way to think about that. If the wings of a fan blade, right? The outer portions of those fan blades, the tips of the fan blade, are moving a lot faster than the inner portions of the fan blade. So that's what's happening when you use this part of the club as the fulcrum, as the pivot point. When you put the most pressure right here, that's slowing the club down, because it's you're shortening your fan blade, right? So it's becoming the inner part of the fan blade, which is moving slower. So that's why you want to have most of your pressure in these fingers right here. That's where you want to have it more in the lead hand of the club. All right. So Gerald R says, Clay's recent video on release on the yo-yo move made a lot of sense. Could you go over that motion again? From the top of the swing. Kudos to TGS, I think he means TSG, for an awesome program. Yeah, so basically what he's talking about is, if you haven't seen the video, Clay talks about how at the top of the swing, you kind of want to have a yo-yo kind of feeling. So we're here, and then if you imagine you have a yo-yo in your hand, you're kind of going like that, right? So that's helping you to shallow out the club. So what happens with a lot of people is when they start the downswing, the trail arm will go this way, they'll move that way, and your trail wrist will also go that way. So that drill does the opposite, right? The drill gets you to where you're feeling that yo-yo. You're doing what this is called external rotation, right? We've talked about losing the arm wrestling contest in the past. That's that external rotation. So external rotation, if you imagine my upper arm bone here, it's my humerus. That's in my shoulder joint. When I go like that, that's external rotation. That allows me to shallow out the club, right? So if I'm doing the opposite, if I'm trying to do a yo-yo this way, right, which you can, I guess, but that's not what Clay's talking about in the video, that's going to steepen the club. If I go like that with my wrist and that with my elbow, that's going to steepen the club. That's going to be hard. You're going to be chopping down into the ball, hitting huge slices, tops, there's all kinds of bad things that happen when you do that. What we want is the opposite, where we go wrist back and then elbow is working like that, like you would. Like imagine I'm throwing a yo-yo behind me. That's what I'm wanting to do. What does that do? That shallows the club. It shallows the club. So that's going to get the club more behind me. So that way I can rotate my body, right? And I can swing from the inside. And if I can rotate my body, then I can get my hands more in front of the ball at impact and get forward shaft lean and compression. And I can also be consistent because my impact variables are going to become much better at impact, because I'm going to be coming in nice and shallow, not really steep if I'm coming down like that, or I'm not going to come down steep and then have to, shallow it out really late and then come in too shallow. A low point is going to happen before the golf ball, things like that, bad things that happen when you do that. So that's why that drill is a good feeling. A lot of what we try to come up with are now, we didn't come up with the yo-yo thing. I think we saw that somewhere, but these things are just visuals, and everyone's mind, clicks a little bit better with better visuals. So that this is just a visual to help you to understand how the elbow should work, how the wrist should work. I did a ball drill a while back where I talked about it's basically that it's a different drill that does the same thing. It gets you to where you get that elbow externally rotating, which is what we want in the start of the downswing. So Richard S. Is it true that rotation must stop at some point in order to allow energy to get out of the club head? It's not going to stop. Rotation does have to stop, but it's going to stall. It's going to slow down to release energy. So if you imagine cracking a whip, right? Or let's imagine I'm just releasing this club, right? So it's going to start with my hips are starting to turn initially. My hips are accelerating, then they're decelerating. When this piece decelerates, it accelerates the next piece. So now my shoulders are accelerating, but then they start to slow down, and that accelerates my arms. And then my arms accelerate, right? And then they slow down, and that accelerates the club, and then the club slows down when it gets to the straight line release, right? So it's like cracking a whip. You're going like that. You're speeding it up, and that's sending basically like a current, almost like a current that goes through your body that transfers energy. This goes really fast and slows down. Then that creates a current. That's where it comes from. I think I've heard some instruction where people have talked about how we need to come in and we need to stop the hips so that way we can throw the club. That's not what we want to do. The shoulders or the hips, we have a terminal amount of rotation, right? Our hips aren't like an owl's head. They can't keep spinning around and round and round. If I turn my hips like this and I turn them as hard as I can turn them as hard as I possibly can. And there's nothing I can do to keep my hips from slowing down, because they're going to reach the end of the range of motion. So when your hips are reaching the end of their range of motion, they're going to stall out. So most people, it's going to be a really terrible thing to try to stop the hips as they're coming in, because what's going to end up happening is that they're going to come down and they're going to stop their hips. And then when they stop their hips, they're going to go like that, right? And sure, you'll deliver some speed, but your impact conditions are going to be bad. You're going to release the club early. You're going to thin shots. You're going to chunk shots. You're going to add a lot of loft. You're going to lose a lot of power and things like that, which is why we want to have the hips coming down and opening up as we're coming into impact, because they're going to slow down, and then that's going to speed everything up as we're coming through impact. And that way you can get forward shaft lean, you can get compression on the ball, you can get consistency, you can get consistent ground contact, consistent face angle, and so on and so forth. So for most people, it's a very, very bad thought to think I need to slow down my hips. For most people, they need to think, okay, I need to get my hips going, and then feel how that is a current that comes through my body that gives me that kind of crack of the whip feeling. And this is what we talk about in the straight line release course, right? We're talking about developing momentum and getting that club to release out in front. That's what we want to have happen. So if you want to work on that portion or that, I would be working on the straight line release to help you get that club cracking like a whip through contact. So Keith E says, what determines the depth of the squat when initiating the downswing? I know there's quite a variation among tour players. For example, Rory's squat is quite pronounced, while others are indiscernible. So part of it has to do with how much you do in the backswing, which I don't recommend doing a lot in the backswing because it makes it more difficult to do it in the downswing. A lot of times when I see a lot of people make this mistake where they try to do the squat in the backswing, and then that just makes them want to do that in the downswing. So when you look at most tour players, you're going to see their head's going to drop anywhere from 1 to 3 inches in the backswing, and then another 1 to 3 inches in the start of the downswing. That's typically what you're going to see. What determines how much you do determines on what you're trying to achieve at impact. If you're trying to achieve more forward shaft lean at impact, you're going to need to get the hands lower, and you're probably going to need more squat, right? You're probably going to need to have more of a squat and legs flexion, so that way you can get the hands really low and open up. So it really just depends on what you're trying to do. People who release the club early, they typically have no squat, right? They release the club early. Those who have a lot of forward shaft lean at impact typically have a lot of squat in their swing. So it really just depends on how much forward shaft lean you're trying to get. If you're someone who's releasing the club early, you're probably going to need to want to try and get more flex in the legs as you're starting down to help you to rotate the body open. So Floyd V says, I video my swing with V1 app and smartphone. Very hard to draw lines with fingers. Any suggestions? I haven't had any trouble with it. Typically, if you use, I'd use both fingers. I'm not sure how you're doing it, but I can kind of show you. Pull up the app on I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this on the video, but I'll do my best here. So oh, there we go. So if you're drawing lines just kind of like that, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to control it. So what I'd recommend doing is using both fingers, and I put them on the screen like this, and you can see how I can move that line around wherever I want. So let's say I want to draw the elbow plane on here, which would be from the hosel of the club up through the trail elbow. So I just place it right there. So use both fingers, and then you can kind of keep them on the screen and then kind of manipulate them around. That's going to be the easiest. And then if I want to draw an angle, then I would just take my line and I would connect it. Sorry, this is going to be hard to say. I would connect it to the other one, the vertex, and then I put the other end where I want it. And you can see, oops, didn't quite get it. You need to get it close enough to where it will connect to it. I know this is hard to see. So there you can see it created a 40-degree angle there. So I'm guessing what you're doing is you're trying to draw lines by going like this. And if you do it that way, you've got to get it in one shot, right? You have to have your finger in the perfect spot, and then you have to run your finger to the perfect spot over here, and you're going to mess it up every time. If you put both fingers on the screen, then you can turn it around and put it put that line wherever you want. So hopefully that helps. I'm not sure exactly if that's what's giving you trouble or not, but hopefully that helps. All right, so let's keep moving forward here. So Steve M says, what would be the proper foot pressures during the backswing and downswing? For example, heel toes, balance, things, etc. So let's talk about overall pressure, and then let's talk about where the pressure is in the swing. So at address, your pressure is going to be mostly, it's balanced, right? It's not going to be a bunch toward the heel or a bunch toward the toe. There are some tour players that have more pressure toward the toe and some pressure more toward the heel. But for the most part, right in the arch, right in the middle of your feet, nice and balanced is going to be good. And same thing in each foot. Typically, you're going to see tour players be pretty balanced. When they measured tour players, they found that most tour players have a little bit more pressure in the lead foot at address And I believe that is because that will help them. They have more pressure to shift, right? And that helps them to get more pressure in the trail foot earlier in the swing. Not everyone's going to be like that, though. There were some players that had more pressure in their trail foot. There's some players that were 50-50, but the average was about 55-45. But I don't think it's good for most amateurs to be trying to get exactly 55-45. These are just averages, okay? So this isn't meant for you to go out and really try to focus on having a pressure. But as long as you're balanced here, I just try to be in very good balance at address. Now, as you start to go up to the top, right, as you're putting the pressure in, it's going to start in the balls of your feet, and it's going to start to work toward your heel as you're going up to the top. Now, as I'm getting up to about this point in the backswing, this is when the pressure in my trail foot is starting to peak out, right? So I want to get pressure right away in my trail foot, and then it's starting to peak out in this area here. And at this point is when I'm starting to shift pressure to my lead foot. And again, when I shift pressure to my lead foot, it's typically going to go into the balls of my feet first and then start to move into the heel as I come into impact. So at address, 50-50 balanced heel toe is what I would go for. As you're going up to the top, you're going to be starting in the balls of the feet and then pushing toward the heel as you get up to this area right here. As you're getting right here, you're maxing out the pressure. It's going to be about 75-80% in your trail foot. As we continue to the top, now we're starting to transfer some of that pressure from the heel of your foot to the ball of your foot, to the balls of your lead foot. And at the top of the swing, I'm about 50-50 pressure, and I'm going heel to the balls of my feet typically. And then from there, that's starting to move into my heel as I'm coming into impact. Now, impact, I have most of my pressure in my heel, and I have about 75-80% of my total pressure in my heel. And then I'm going to come all the way around into the full finish. I'm going to have about 90% of my pressure in that lead heel. So it's just about, imagine if you're standing on top of a cap to a like a screw-on cap. That's kind of what you want to feel like. Imagine you were trying to twist off a cap. You can feel, okay, when I go like that, I'm pushing into my balls of my feet and my heel over here. And then when I go like that, I'm pushing into the balls of my feet here, and then the heel over here. That's basically, that's the same thing that's happening in the golf swing to help you to kind of twist around and get yourself to rotate. So if you're struggling with early extension, typically when I see people have the weight or the pressure in the balls of the feet, and they kind of stay there throughout the entire time, right? So what we want is to feel like we're more rotational when we're going back. We're rotating the hips back, right? So we're going from the balls of the feet to the heel, and then as we're starting down, we're going again from the balls of the feet to the heel over here. It's like if you get that feeling that you're twisting off of a cap with your feet, it can help you feel what you need to feel in your swing as well. So Dennis L says, do you push off with your front leg on irons the same as a driver? For the most part, I mean, you're pushing off, but you may be pushing more force with the driver if you're swinging your driver more aggressively. But yeah, you're pushing into the ground the same way. It's just you may be using more force with the driver to try to generate more speed. So Dennis P says the dog has a real comfort zone. Yeah, she does. Anthony M says, what is the dog's name and breed? She is a silver lab, and her name is Hazel. All right, so if you got any more questions, looks like we have one more question here from Dennis P. We probably have time for a few more after that. So if you got your questions, go ahead and put them in there. If we don't have any questions, then we'll wrap it up for today. But we got Dennis P's question is the last one on the docket right here. We just got another one from Charlie. So depending on how long these take, we'll see how many we can do. So Dennis P says, clarification. I have the room to swing a club inside, just don't have enough space to have the camera far enough away to record the full swing. I can record setup from top to wrist at impact without my head. I used it to check my angle of spine tilt. I could record head and waist, which is a segment, but not the full body swing. Looking for incremental views that would benefit most. And it depends on what piece you're working on. If you're working on your spine angles, then I would try to have it, right in here. If you're working on the compression line, I try to have it, kind of in there. If you're working on lag, I try to have it, that it's in this area where you're seeing the lag. If you're working on release, I try to have it in this area. If you're working on the power turn, and I'd have it to where you can see your shoulders. So I would just try to have it segmented out to whatever specific piece that you're working on. So Charlie G says, I have a hard time getting bowed or even flat wrist at the top, which I think is due to flexibility in my right wrist. It seems if I strengthen my right hand grip, so strengthening your right hand grip can help, or strengthening your grip in general can help for sure. Yeah, that can definitely help. And if you have a very strong grip, it's okay to have your lead wrist, a little bit cupped, in your trail wrist. I mean, because it's not necessarily, it's not going to fix the flexibility in your trail wrist. But let's say you have a really strong grip. When you go at the top, you can be more like this, right? A little bit cupped in that lead wrist, but you still want to have your trail wrist in that bent back position. So you may find if you're strengthening your grip, you might be even more cupped at the top. It's more about the face orientation at the top of the swing, right? We want to have that. We don't want to have that face really, really open, because that's going to make it. You're just going to have to do a lot to close it in the downswing, and most people have trouble closing the face to begin with. So if we have it open at the top, that just makes it more difficult. So if we get it to where it's pretty much in a neutral position, that we have to do a lot less in the downswing to get it squared up. Now there are a lot of players that have the face open at the top, like a Freddie Couples, a Webb Simpson, and they're very great ball strikers. It doesn't apply to everybody, but for the general public, there's going to be most amateurs are going to struggle with getting the face squared up at impact with the face very open at the top. So Thomas S. Says, consistently striking the ball on inside of club face, and even when I set it farther away, same result. Guess I might be moving hips to extend ball, but is there a drill I can do? So it's hard to say without seeing your swing exactly why you're hitting the ball on the heel, but the best advice I can give you is to try to hit the ball on the toe. Because if you're just standing further away, you're going to adapt, right? And your mind subconsciously knows, okay, I need to get that club out to the golf ball. So what I would do is I'd line up the way you normally would, and then I would try to hit the ball off this part of the face. Try to hit the ball off the toe. And if you still hit the ball on the heel, then I would exaggerate it even more. I would maybe even feel like you're going to miss the golf ball. So I feel like you're setting up to it like this, and you may need to feel like you're coming in and missing the golf ball like that to get to where you want to go. So once you start getting to where you actually start hitting the ball off the toe, and when that's your intention, then that's good. That means your feel is becoming real, and you're becoming calibrated, and your feel is matching the results matching your intention. So you can start to ease off of that a little bit. You can go back to maybe feeling like it's a little bit off the toe, and then if that's still on the toe, then you can start feeling like it's in the center of the face. But the best advice I can give you, without knowing or seeing what's going on, and what I know will help, is to try to hit the ball off the toe, and that will move the strike closer to the center of the face. If it moves it way off the toe, then ease off of it. If it's still in the heel, then exaggerate it more. So Mauricio R. says, during the backswing, when we start shifting the weight to your lead side, during the backswing, when we start shifting the weight to your leading leg, usually the head moves to the left. In order to avoid that, is it necessary to squat a little when shifting the weight to the leading leg? So typically in the start of the downswing, you should have some flexing of the legs. There should be a squat there in the start of the downswing. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the club moving to the left. I'm not sure what angle you're talking about, but there should be a squat in the start of the downswing. That if you just kind of shift your weight to your lead side, it's going to be hard to rotate the hips. You're typically going to throw the arms in front of the body. So that's why there needs to be a sit and squat, basically, or a sit and rotate, kind of like a squat and rotate. and that's going to put your leg at an angle to be able to keep rotating and have the hands low, so that way you can get the club to release out in front. If you go up to the top and you're like this and you just slide the way forward, well, your hands are going to be high and you're not going to be able to rotate, and you're just going to release the club. So Anthony M says, great job, Q. Take the rest of the day off. Have a good weekend. I wish I could take the rest of the day off, but probably not going to happen today. If I take the rest of the day off, that just means I have to work tomorrow. So I'd rather watch some football tomorrow. My Colts are playing at 1 o'clock. So. All right. So we got a few minutes left here. If we got any last minute questions, go ahead and get them in there. Clay is a slave driver. No, it's just, it's up to me how many students I want to have for swing reviews. So Clay doesn't make me have a certain number. It's kind of up to me. So I think he would like me to have more, but yeah, if I had more, I'd be working way more hours than I want to. So any last minute questions? If not, we'll hold your peace until Monday. That's when we'll be back. Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Give you another minute here if you have any last minute questions. Jim S says, I'm from Indy. You like the Colts too? Yeah, I lived in Indianapolis, or not Indianapolis. I lived in Indiana. I grew up in KZ, Illinois, which is not far from Indy. I think it's about 90 miles or so. So yeah, I grew up a Colts fan, Peyton Manning and all that stuff. So I've always been a Colts fan. And like I said, I lived in Brazil, Indiana, which is about an hour from Indy, on I-70 there for about 7 years or so before I moved to Florida. Go Chiefs! Yeah, we have it's funny you say that. We have a lot of Chiefs fans on our staff. So one of the co-founder, Josh, he's a Chiefs fan, and then we've hired a lot of his friends and stuff. So a lot of them are from Kansas City area. So we have a lot of Chiefs fans in our company for sure. I'm the only Colts fan though. So Jim S says Manning was great. I agree. I love Peyton. He was awesome. Thomas S says, thanks for the tip on hitting near the toe. Seems to have moved it to the center. That's awesome. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of what golf, I think people overcomplicate things a little bit. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So that'd be a challenge to everybody. If you understand what's going on at contact, right? If you know what the contact thing is, you're hitting it off the toe, you're hitting it off the heel, you're slicing it, you're chunking it, or things like that. You're just adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you're chunking it, you're hitting 5 inches behind the golf ball. Try to hit 5 inches in front of the golf ball. Just adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So last question here from Dennis L says, I'm hitting my drive straight, but now my irons seem to have a severe draw. So just keep doing what you're doing with your driver. Adjust your feel to get the desired result with your irons. If you have a severe draw, I would try to hit a fade. I wouldn't try to hit the same swing that you're hitting with the driver if that same swing is getting you bad results, right? With your irons. Clubs are a little bit differently, right? It's a longer club. It sets up different. It's got a different shaft in it, so it's going to react differently it will sometimes react differently than what your irons will, right? So you may need to stick with the swing that you have with your driver, but then when you hit your irons, you may need to feel like you're hitting a fade. So you may need to feel like you're swinging over the top more with an open face. That's what I would try to feel like. So Gary W says, thanks for the advice on drawing lines on the V1 app. No problem, Gary. All right, so that will wrap it up for today. I'm glad that helped, Gary. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy some football. and I will talk to you next week.